Is Bend Studio making Days Gone too? A lot has been happening recently with the studio behind Days Gone. There is so much to unpack here, so I'm going to catch you up on everything that's happened so far, and then we're going to get into the real question: is there a Days Gone sequel in the works? And if so, when can we expect it? I've talked before about the secret back-end updates to the Days Gone beta branches on Steam that were happening in November and December 2024. Updates that pointed to a potential remaster coming soon.
I'm listening.
And in January 2025, they quietly made the beta branches private, essentially hiding them from public view and raising suspicions even further. Because why would you hide the beta branches if there was nothing to hide? It was all very suspicious and seemed to indicate that something big was going on. What happened next took us all by surprise. In mid-January, Sony cancelled 2 live service games in the works at first-party developers, one of which was the previously unannounced project Bend has been working on for the past few years. That unnamed game was a multiplayer game built on the open-world systems of Days Gone. It was rumored to have a sci-fi military theme and was new IP, or intellectual property, meaning it was not a sequel or another entry in an existing franchise. Long story short, it wasn't Days Gone 2. However, this is where things get interesting. But first, we have to go back in time to last summer. In August 2024, Sony released the multiplayer live service game Concord, which failed miserably. We're talking nuclear disaster level failure. It sold under 25,000 copies, and just 2 weeks after launch, they pulled the game and refunded all sales.
I am developing a taste for destruction.
Concord was reportedly in development for 8 years at an estimated cost of over $100 million. Needless to say, that might have soured Sony's appetite for live service games. Now, what has this got to do with Days Gone? It's obvious that Sony is reacting to the market with the cancellation of these 2 live service games. Concord wasn't the only live service failure last year, and Sony seems to have come to the conclusion that its bread and butter is in more traditional format single-player games. Couple that with the certainty that Sony will want to recoup the loss they made on Concord, and you have the perfect recipe for the Days Gone Remaster. We know for a fact that despite a choppy release, Days Gone has become a fan favorite with impressive sales and downloads as a free PS Plus game. It has a very vocal fan base clamoring for a sequel. This is why it's highly likely we'll be getting a remaster soon. Sony has a guaranteed way to turn those players who downloaded the game for free into paying customers. Upsell a $10 upgrade to 9 million players, and you're raking in a hefty chunk of cash. But I hear you ask, what about Days Gone 2? When we think about it, the timing of all this raises one very important question.
All right, you got my attention.
Given Concord's failure in the summer of last year, why wait until January to cancel 2 other live service games they had in development? The timing of these 2 events tells us a lot. The beta branch updates that indicate a remaster started dropping in November. It could potentially be getting close to launch, which would make sense given Sony's desire to have as many high-quality titles available for the PS5 Pro, and the fact that they've actually said they're going to be pushing out a bunch of remasters. So, what's the plan for Bend Studio? It's highly unlikely that Sony would cancel a game at a first-party developer and just leave them with nothing to do. The gap between the failure of Concord in August and the live service game's cancellation in January seems like just the right amount of time to lay out a game plan. While I'm sure Sony's cancellation was a surprise to everyone at Bend, that surprise probably came months ago. In the intervening weeks, they've undoubtedly been pitching ideas to Sony to replace the cancelled live service project. And there's a very high chance Days Gone 2 was among those pitches. Look, Sony has the numbers. They know it sold well. There's a 99% chance there's a remaster coming out this year. Now is the right time to make a sequel. With the announcement of the live service game's cancellation, Sony is refocusing the studio on a new project. Days Gone 2 checks all the boxes. Another element to factor in is the retirement of PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan in March of last year. It was Ryan who steered Sony in the direction of games as a service, and it was Ryan who was at the helm when Days Gone was released and a sequel was shot down. As management changes, so does the direction of a company and the projects that get greenlit. As for how long this would take, well, here's the bad news. Even if this is a plan that's been in place for the past, let's say, few months, it's highly unlikely we'll be seeing a sequel anytime soon. Days Gone took 6 years to make, and a sequel could take just as long, or even longer. So for now, we wait. We keep our fingers crossed. And when the remaster drops, you let Sony know you love Days Gone and you buy a copy. Screw it. Buy one for a friend as well. Sony has shown us all along that they react to sales numbers. So it's up to us to speak their language.